the proposition to eliminate all villages in the county of Chautauqua. And we would certainly get a shot at moving the agenda forward for streamlining government and trying to stop the duplication of service, the increased costs and taxes, which then spirals back to our population dropping 30,000 people in 30 years. A whole bunch of
those nasty politicians, too.
You can always do with a few smaller numbers of us.
Yes. You're all present company included, not included.
I've said right along when I ran, I don't have any problem being the last mayor in Fredonia. If we can reach the point where the public sees the value of eliminating layers of government, I'm not going to stand in the way, and will do what I can to help lead to that point where we get down to a workable number of governments, we get down to a workable number of elected officials. 176 people were on the ballot last November. Or races were on the ballot. There weren't 176 contested races, but there were 176 races in this county for elected office. Down in some places to assessors. I don't think we had any dog catchers, actually. I think we've finally gotten rid of the dog catchers being an elected official. But we have far too many levels with far too many people being elected, and we can't find people to even run for all those positions anymore. And that's a shame.
Well, it's I guess it's sort of a phenomenon. Westfield has I had the red car, we used to call him red, he's now Dave Card, the mayor of Westfield on recently, and he pointed out that they have a real stumbling block in Westfield. Westfield Town, Westfield Village. They can't come together because Westfield a million years ago contracted for electricity at a real favorable amount. And the contract is written for the village of Westfield. And if they ever combined into the town and the village disappeared, you better believe that the company will go for they'll say, I'm sorry, there's no more village, you lose your contract.
But again, that is a point where you need to get a committee going to negotiate that contract. Clearly the intent was to serve a certain area, and maybe at that point, if they consolidated, they'd have to agree that that contract benefit doesn't extend to the rest of the town, but you would have at least a district within the town that would be entitled to that benefit.
I think they sent a letter, and what I gather is they're still waiting for an answer several months later.
Well, sometimes you have to push that to a judicial decision, too. If they aren't going to get an answer, I mean, if that's a stumbling block, they need to find a way around a block like that. Because it's clear what was intended to be benefited was a certain geographic area, whatever its governmental entity. And that's the other thing people do not think about when you talk about eliminating a level of government. It doesn't mean the geographic designated area is going to disappear. Fredonia existed at least 10 years, there's references to Fredonia 10 years before we were an incorporated village. And if we were dissolved into the town, there would still be the entity of Fredonia. There's still an entity known as the hamlet of Leona. These places don't go away. There are still people there that have an identity. They're going to have a mailing address still. They just aren't going to have a government. They're not going to have somebody that's going to tax them for a service that they're taxing them, and then they have the town tax them.
Right. They still have a government. They just won't have two governments.
Right. But the government in that particular geographic area would be gone.
Yeah.
It's not going to change the world. It's going to change your tax bill.
Okay. Budget. I noticed that, as usual, I don't know how your police department, did it go up again? I'm sure it did because the costs are higher. You have 3 police departments operating over there. You got the county, who patrols. You have the local police department, Fredonia Department, and then you also have a secondary one. The village gets service when necessary from the university. They have their own police department.
Well, if you take a compass and draw a circle from the center of Fredonia, there are actually, I believe, 6 police stations within a 4-mile radius. The state police have 2. They have one on Route 60. They have one on the Thruway. You have the city of Dunkirk, the village of Fredonia. You have a sheriff's substation in Brockton, or at Bosse's, and then another one in Brockton.
So you're up to your neck in police.
Well, I just think, again, it's one of those things where there's a service that clearly is needed. There's an absolute necessity to have law enforcement. There's no ways around that. That is a basic, you can't really hand that off to the private sector. That is a government duty. The problem is you have created a mishmash of different agencies that cross over. The county's always complaining they don't have enough money to man as high as they'd like to, but they need to be there. Well, and I think if you look at the reality, our village police force is already going outside of the village, a necessity, because they're helping out where there's lacks in coverage. And in the meantime, if we would have it under one direction, one leadership, there's so much more we could do. Or the alternative, if we're not going to have one full police force in the county, is to take the existing regional ones, Dunker's police force, Fredonia's police force, abolish the road patrol from the sheriff, maybe tell the state police there's not much need for them here,
Well,
and then do regionalized.
Greg's going to do that anyway for a lot of villages, he says.
Well, you know, if it happens, what you then need is you're going to have that service picked up by the neighboring police forces that are already there. And then what you're doing is you're able to use the manpower you have that is serving a congregated population, a village or a city, and covering that area, and then those forces can spread out and pick up the less dense populated areas and provide the assistance they need. Yes, the local forces would need more manpower. They might need another vehicle or two. But at the end of the day, the number of people you need to provide that service and the cost of that service countywide is going to go down.
Good. Mort, there's somebody trying to get in. Hello? Okay, we got something. We'll have to wait a second. All right.
We aren't going to have to redo the show because the phones aren't working.
No. We did redo one show. This is a redo here. You people didn't catch the fact that are listening in, my friends, but we did a show with Mike, and somebody was extremely abusive, almost to the point of hysteria, and not just with a certain individual whom he named.
Fortunately, not with us.
But with everybody, every entity of the county law enforcement, from the Supreme Court on down, and the cops, and the neighbors, and everybody, all the politicians. And so we decided that was that one was just so broken up. We couldn't at that time edit it, so we had to cancel that one. And then Mike came in a couple more times. There was kind of a screw up in schedules or whatever. But here he is for real. Yeah. This is the genuine other, I might add. The other Mike Sullivan. There's another Mike Sullivan who's very well known in this area, and that is the guy who directs the programming. Actually, he's in charge of publicity at Chautauqua. He takes care of all their stuff there. And he had a little problem with Channel 5 this winter when over the sleigh rides. They took a sleigh ride, and they televised it, and the guy said, "Oh, that's the Hamilton building, and that's the building that Edison lived in," and he was all wrong. He had no real idea, according to Mike. And he said, "Well, we want that polled, you know." He said, "How dare you put that on? This guy didn't know from nothing." So one of our camera crew said, "Well, in defense, well, nobody knows the difference anyway. Who cares, you know?" But at any rate, I have a feeling we're not going to be invited over there right away. I don't know if the other Mike Sullivan's going to come here either. Hey, good morning, caller. Finally, hello.
Good morning.
Hi.
I have two questions for your guest. One is kind of, well...
You've been waiting long enough. You can have two questions.
Okay. From the sound of your last name, I'm going to take it that you're Irish.
A little bit.
That's kind of what I thought.
Mikey Sullivan, there's nothing more Irish unless it's Powers.
There you go. Well,
Powers is Smith in Ireland, just about. I mean, there's more Powers than any other name. That's why they have Powers Irish whiskey, Powers beer, and all these wonderful things that are all done by Powers.
Never associated you with Irish whiskey, but now I will.
Powers Irish is top selling. It sells better than Guinness, Paddy's and the Bush and 2 or 3 others. You know, the Irish whiskey is an interesting thing, and they tried to do it right for several centuries. They couldn't get it right because they were making Scotch, and they love Scotch. They just couldn't get it right. So finally they threw in the towel and said, "All right, we'll call it Irish whiskey." And it's damn good stuff, I might add. All right, caller, back to business.
Well,
what's up?
To my knowledge, there have not been a lot of Irish mayors of Dunkirk. Is this correct?
He's Irish mayor of Fredonia to start with.
I'm sorry, I meant Fredonia. So, come St. Patty's Day, did we do something kind of extra special this year?
Well, I've tried for a couple of years to get a group that would run a small parade in Fredonia. I thought it'd be kind of neat, especially since we have a number of bars in town that like to capitalize on St. Patrick's Day.
A liquor store too.
So that's one of the things I've tried, and I think at some point we may end up seeing it. The problem you have with most people trying to coordinate that,